Hi, welcome to What's Up Williston, the town's monthly TV show where we take a closer look at things going on in our community. I'm your host, Erik Wells. Excited to have back on the program Prescott Nadeau, Senior Firefighter from Williston Fire Department this month. We've got a number of things we wanted to chat about, Prescott.
Yeah, absolutely.
I thought we'd start out with talking about if there's an incident in your home or your business, anywhere, you need to call Williston Fire. What are some things to be prepared for? We're talking about a plan to vacate the premises.
Yeah, absolutely. First off, Erik, thank you so much for having me back. Really appreciate this opportunity. I think the most important thing that we wanted to stress this holiday season is, we could go into details about specific holiday safety, but we want to talk about prevention. And what you just hit on is extraordinarily important, and that is having an escape plan and having that plan early on. So the first step that we want to talk about is making that plan together as a family, and getting if you have any children, getting them together at the table to begin discussing it, and hopefully taking that a step further. We'd love if it could end up on paper. Because then it can be referenced again. You can look back on it, make any changes as they might appear. Not just making it together, but when you make that plan, actually trying it out. So physically following the escape route that you plan out of your house, to make sure that if it's out a back door, you and your children know if the door is locked or blocked, where else can we go? We really stress knowing 2 ways out of every room in your house, whether it be a bedroom, a kitchen, living room, whatever that might be. We want to make sure there's 2 ways out. So again, with the home escape plan, making sure you do that together as a family, making sure that you actually practice it, and knowing 2 ways out of every room in your house.
So what's it look like? A family comes together to sit down to map out the plan. What are some elements they should be really putting on paper?
Sure, yeah. So I think the first one that you want to see is you want to mark out where your home carbon monoxide and smoke detectors are. The reason for that is often they are interconnected, and even if they are not, you still want to mark where they are to be familiar as a whole family unit, because when they do go off, we can't treat it like a joke or, mom or dad burnt food again, and blow it off. It needs to be treated seriously. And that is where a home escape plan would come in, is if you've practiced it, you've gotten down, sat down at a table and said, here is the drawing of where all of our smoke and carbon monoxide detectors are, then that will actually help remind you on that biannual basis to test them and make sure that they actually work.
I think with younger children especially, when you're talking about something like this, it can be a scary concept for them. Any tips for parents, guardians, for kind of explaining this to children to help them buy into it?
Absolutely. So the first tip is actually to follow a really helpful website, which is nfpa.org, and that's the National Fire Protection Association. They have a lot of really great tips for adults and kids. But from me to you and all the viewers right now, I have a 15-month-old who definitely doesn't really like loud noises. So I'm very sensitive to the fact that there's families all over our community and neighboring communities as well that have children that are scared by even the prospect of an emergency like that occurring. So back to the word prevention. Anything that we can do ahead of an emergency is going to pay dividends when one occurs. And so, for example, taking a smoke or carbon monoxide detector and actually removing it from the ceiling, showing your children, and being, have them push the button to test it. Let them know there's going to be a loud noise. If they hear that noise ahead of time in a safe, controlled atmosphere, they're going to be that much more likely to remember that in the event of an emergency, if in the event of that detector activating, and then be more comfortable with what to do next, which hopefully, per your plan, is safely but fast evacuate the house.
So key points I'm hearing are have a plan, map it out together as a family, and practice it.
Absolutely.
Something else we wanted to talk about was reflective E911 signs. Why is that so important to have in our homes?
So I think fire department response, we pride ourselves in being fast. But part of that means, us getting our gear on in a very quick amount of time, getting out the door and getting to the scene in a fast amount of time, which is great. The issue we often run into, more often than people think, is when we are trying to find an address. And it is often extremely hard to do because people's numbering, whether it be on a mailbox or on a house, is very difficult to see. Not even just at night, often at night, but even sometimes during the day. So having those reflective 911 signs, they sell them at hardware stores. The Williston Fire Department has them for sale as well. We have that link on our website. Wherever you get it, it does not matter, just so long as you have that retro-reflective E911 signage. More so, I think the piece I want to stress is more than just the numbers on your mailbox. That's helpful. And a lot of people don't even have that. But to take that to the next level and say a really retro-reflective, bright 911 sign is going to help us as emergency responders, fire, police, EMS, get to your house much faster. We work in seconds, not minutes, and that will shave crucial seconds off our time.
So what's it look like when you get a call in terms of navigation? Do you guys have a GPS unit on the truck, combination of knowing, you're familiar with town, but as we know, there's a lot of new buildings going up in town, new residences. Can you walk me through that? How do you guys find where you're going?
Absolutely, and it's a great question because we in the Williston Fire Department leverage technology to our advantage. You had just indicated GPS. We subscribe to a system called Active 911, which actually not only provides us with a GPS map to that house, but or business, but we also on there are able to zoom in on a satellite view, just like a Google Maps feature, for example, and we're able to identify is the driveway very long? How long? Are we going to be able to navigate our fire truck up there in the event of a fire? Things like that. However, as you had just alluded to, technology doesn't always work. And we have had instances where it has failed us. We do have backup plans. I want to assure our community that we are prepared in that regard. As old school as a 3-ring binder that has street listings and business listings as to where we're going. Mm-hmm. But that is slower. And so if we can leverage that technology, we're going to. The reason that 911 signage is incredibly important is because a GPS unit, if it were to fail, or even if it were to work, it's not accurate. For example, if we get up a long driveway and there's a Y, a fork in that driveway area, and we're taking our best guess, upwards of 1,000 feet difference, could mean a great deal of time if we're talking about backing an apparatus down a steep driveway. And in these winter months, that's not a fun prospect.
And you talk about, to that point, working in seconds, not minutes, and someone needs to call you for assistance at Williston Fire. What are some things they can do to help your arrival when you're coming on scene? Some key things for people to know.
Yeah, so the most important thing is calling early, and we can chat a little bit more about that regarding some EMS, emergency medical issues. But when we, as emergency responders, arrive on the scene, really helpful thing is at night, have your light on. Turn a porch or a garage light on. It just helps us, especially in a row of houses in the middle of the night. If there is one light on, it is yet another indicator on top of a really nice retro-reflective 911 sign that this house is where we're headed. When we get into the home, it's really nice. We love animals. We love pets. But the reality of it is when we're there for an emergency, we have a mission. That's a critical mission. Even if you have the friendliest dog or cat ever, we are strangers in their house. Mm-hmm. And they can sometimes, even if it's the first time ever, they can sometimes lash out at that. We show up sometimes in all of our gear and equipment, and there's a truck out front with lights on, and so just making sure if the homeowner has the ability to put those animals maybe in a back room just for the duration of that call would be great. And then speaking, I guess, specifically towards the medical side of things, we really would like to have some information available to us. If that's not possible, we absolutely understand. But the ideal situation would be we subscribe to something called Vial of Life, which literally looks like a medication bottle. And in that bottle is a sheet of paper that has name, date of birth, list of medications, a whole host of valuable information. It either gets put in a refrigerator or a freezer with a magnet that identifies that it's there. If those, by the way, are able to be picked up completely free of charge at the fire department. We try to give them out to as many citizens as we can via EMS calls if they don't already have one, but we just encourage people to pick those up from us. And even if that's not the case, whether somebody has medical discharge paperwork from a prior admission to the hospital or their primary care office, or frankly, what we have a lot of times is somebody just has a list of a few medications in their wallet, all of which is extraordinarily helpful to us as emergency providers. If somebody's having trouble breathing, we don't want to ask them a ton of questions. We'd like them to, we'll help begin solving their problem. But having that medication list, that problem list, readily accessible for us is going to be very helpful.
And you were speaking to before some calling early and some signs for a major medical incident that people can see early on. Can you share some of those? I think heart attack, stroke are some major ones.
Absolutely. So we consider all medical incidents to be emergencies, and we look at people when they dial 911, it is their emergency. Whatever that is, we are going to respond and treat it like a true emergency, because for them that's exactly what it is. And we are not physicians. We don't have X-ray vision, so we don't know 100% what is occurring at that time. Often information between the dispatcher and the caller, and then the dispatcher and us, is not 100% clear. And so we have to look at and treat each of these situations as if it was the worst case scenario, and handle it down from there. You had just mentioned two very critical emergencies, and I'll hit on the first one, which is a heart attack. That's very good to chat about today because here we are in wintertime. And people are shoveling snow. That might be very heavy snow at times, or they're out. Wintertime is often a time to be more sedentary. A lot of these, it's a time when health problems can manifest more often. So specifically with heart attack, some symptoms of a heart attack that people want to be very aware of would be the obvious chest pain or chest discomfort. Often people say it has to be a crushing chest pain, like an elephant is sitting directly on my chest. That's not the case. A lot of heart attacks manifest in a much lesser just discomfort. If it's left long enough, then it will become potentially that crushing chest pain. We really don't want to get it to that point. Shortness of breath is another big one. That can be an isolated symptom. If you just have shortness of breath with no chest pain, that doesn't necessarily mean that you aren't having a heart attack. You could simply be having shortness of breath, which along those lines, something that not a lot of people think about, although public campaigns have really promoted this more in recent years. Symptoms in women are often different than in men. A woman might not have the standard chest pain I just described. They may, however, have arm pain or jaw pain, even back pain. And that could be how it starts. I talked about shortness of breath, general malaise. Frankly, a lot of women present themselves to the ER with flu-like symptoms. And it turns out that what they're having is a mild or potentially much more major cardiovascular incident. So, and then the other one you would hit on there, Eric, which is arguably equally as important as far as the critical nature of it, is a stroke. And although I'm not even going to say that it's very important time-wise to be cognizant of getting people the help they need. And so we use FAST, F-A-S-T, which stands for FACE. arm, speech, and then time. And so face, Eric, what we're looking for specifically is one-sided droop. You can, a good way that we as providers tell, which citizens in town can do the same thing, have your loved one, friend, coworker, whoever it is, have them smile and tell them to give you a nice big teeth green. We do that because if they do this and one side is very notably drooping, that is a very key indicator for us of a stroke. Arms, we're asking, it could be as simple as arm numbness, specifically one-sided, but another test that we will ask people to do that they can do at home is have them stick their arms up like this, and if there's a drift in one of those arms, and we're talking, it doesn't have to be to the floor drift, we're talking even a little bit of a drift down is a potential indicator as well. And then S is speech. Speech, we're looking for 2 indicators potentially. You don't have to have both. One would just be slurring. If that speech is slurred as an indicator, or if they're not making sense. If what they're saying is seeming almost like gibberish. It might be actual words, but purple rainbow sunshine is not at all what you should be saying, but that loved one or coworker might be just spitting that out because they're having a specific type of stroke.
Okay.
And then finally, the really key indicator, T, is time. Call 911. People are really nervous to call 911. It might be the very first time they've ever done so. They might not know what's going to occur, but I can tell you what's going to occur is help is going to come for their loved one, their friend, their coworker, and it's going to come fast. We really want to stress that dialing 911 is going to, you might be on hold for a moment with the 911 dispatcher. Any moment you're on hold, they are working behind the scenes to get that help coming. So.
This is all great information for everyone out there. We're just about out of time, but we wanted to quickly touch on how someone could reach out to Williston Fire to discuss anything with you guys.
Sure, yeah. We really encourage conversation to occur. We love positive conversation, and we have great feedback during our pancake breakfasts and things like that. But we also encourage people, if they have had a negative interaction, or if they have heard rumors or something they want to clear up, we would love, our fire chief, Ken Morton, has an open door policy. It's open all the time. When he's at that fire station, walk right in and you can chat with him at any point in time. Myself, as the public information officer, I welcome comments. Message me on whether it be email, pnadeau@willistonfire.com, or on our Facebook page, which I help run. Any form that you would like to reach out with questions, comments, concerns, we really welcome that, to be able to get the correct information out to people.
Well, thanks so much for coming on again, Prescott, and thanks for you and everyone over there at Williston Fire for all the hard work you do.
It's our pleasure, Eric. Thanks for having us.
Thanks. Next this month on What's Up Williston, I recently spent some time learning more about the town clock housed in the Federated Church. Here's a closer look.
While we got involved with the church and became familiar with it, I met Howard Carpenter, who was taking care of the church and had for 25 years with his family. And being a mechanical design engineer, I was fascinated by the quality and the uniqueness of the clock movement. So ultimately, I'll get to that when I refer to a few notes. I took over the job. The church was built in 1867 with a bell at the Methodist church. And the bell was cast in 1864 in Troy, New York. In 1899, the church was federated with the Congregationalists, so we became the Williston Federated Church. Also in 1899, money was raised by our town fathers, and an E. Howard time and strike round top tower clock was purchased and delivered on 8/16/99 and installed by the end of the month. The E. Howard Company is in Massachusetts, and it was established in 1881, and built hundreds of tower clocks for customers all over the United States. The last tower clock they built was in 1964. The town of Williston actually owns the clock, and it pays for the maintenance, supplies, and the stipend for the clock custodian or winder, which is currently at $600 annually. They do give pay raises because when I started it was $125 a year. In 1997, the original steeple was removed from the tower for repairs for replacement of structural beams in the tower. And it did last a while. It lasted 20 years before it deteriorated. And the latest iteration of a brand new steeple was started. In 1997, I took over the responsibility for the clock from Howard Carpenter, who cared for the clock with his family for 25 years. Howard died in 2010. The responsibility is now in the hands of Brian Meisenzal, and he started in January 2018. So people often wonder how the clock works, and in principle, it's very similar to a cuckoo clock. They each have a time, what they call the time side, and a strike side, which are powered by weights, which need winding normally on a weekly basis. The thing that rings the bell, church bell, on the hour, and the cuckoo clock does a similar thing with its typical cuckoo bang speech. The speed of each clock is regulated by a pendulum. So they're very similar in basic principle, or but do represent different masses, if you will. You know, the cuckoo clock you can hold in your lap, and the town clock is a little larger. A couple of interesting facts is that the clock has run accurately through a temperature range of about 140 degrees for 118 years as of 2018. The time weight is 500 pounds, and it dropped 16 feet and has wound 15 miles in the last 100 years. The strike weight weighs 1,500 pounds, drops 30 feet, and has been wound 29 miles in 100 years. Well, I was ready to give the town my notice because my back was killing me from winding the strike weight. It's pretty hefty. And then you guys gave me a raise. So I said, I have to figure out how to do this. So I took an old bicycle from my daughter, who donated it to the cause, and rigged it so that I could mount the bicycle. I ran a chain up to the movement and was able to wind it by bicycling, if you will. And that's still being used today. Brian gets some of his exercise that way.
How long would it take to raise? It's a 1,500 pound?
Well, it probably, if you're healthy and you can keep going without stopping, it takes about 10 minutes. And the time side is much shorter, maybe 5 minutes. We still do that one by hand with a hand crank.
How often does it need to be wound?
Basically once a week. You can cheat a little by a day or so, but it's once a week.
So you'll know when it's about time, when the weight is getting down to the base.
Yeah, either that or it stops. And then you know you've been late.
So you took over in 1997 as the clock custodian.
Right.
Did you know what you were getting yourself into at that point?
Oh, kind of. I was really looking forward to it because I just love mechanical things and was totally impressed by the quality of the workmanship. So things do break. So, fortunately I had the skills to fix a lot of them over the years. But they weren't unanticipated, and I kind of enjoyed the process. So I enjoyed my 20 years. I just wore out. and I was happy that Brian was willing to take it over.
So as pastor of this church, as I walk around town and connect with people in a variety of community settings, I will find that the people have a real interest, a real sense of connection with the steeple and with the clock. And so as the new steeple went up last year, there was a lot of community interest, a lot of conversation about that. And even since then, it's one of the first things people will mention to me when I meet them and identify myself as pastor of this church. And when the clock is functioning, the chimes are being heard, people tell me they're so glad about that. And those rare occasions when the clock and the steeple clock and the chimes are still under repair, I hear about that too because people miss them. It's just a significant piece of evidence about how important this symbol, the steeple and the clock, how important those symbols are as a representation of the spirit of community that is evident here in Williston.
Over time, it's still important to people. You know, when the clock it stopped ringing once, and I got a telephone call from a woman who said she misses the ring of the bell, and our kids are all upset about it, and what's going on? How come it's not fixed? So I invited her over here for a tour, and she was all excited about it. So that interest is in many people's hearts. You know, they love the sound of the bell. And my wife still talks about her town clock in Germany, and she has her clock recorded so she can listen to it occasionally. So I think it's important. And you know, originally they picked the tower of the church because it was the highest point in town, if you will, so more people could hear the time being struck because of its elevation. And you know, years ago, militias were called by striking bells in town steeples, and they were a rallying point for many people in town. Some people didn't have clocks, so it gave them an idea of what time they had to get out of bed, I guess.
And finally this month, let's take a closer look at some things going on in our community with a community notebook. So an update on the Muddy Brook crossing. The town and the city of Burlington, South Burlington, are working towards a solution to reopen the temporary bridge over the Muddy Brook connecting Marshall Avenue in Williston to Kimball Avenue in South Burlington. Damage occurred on the Halloween storm to the banks of the river on either side, making the temporary crossing here unsafe for passage. So a contractor's developed a plan for the repairs of both communities, and preliminary work has begun to create an access road to reach the Muddy Brook from the South Burlington side of the crossing. So at this time, the final details regarding project funding are being worked out, but the repair work will be fully funded by the Federal Highway Administration. And right now, a timeline for reopening the bridge cannot be determined at this point in the process. The town will continue to update residents as new information becomes available on the town website and social media. A reminder, we're getting into the fiscal year 2021 budget process. There'll be public meetings in December and January, and all meetings are recorded for viewing if you can't make it. Visit the town website for additional resources. Really asking folks to get involved. Here to share your input on the budget as we look at the services the town will be offering. Water bills are due by December 31st. You can pay in person, by mail, or via the drop box of the town clerk's office. Now that it's December, the winter parking ban is in effect. There's no parking on town roads from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. daily. This allows the Department of Public Works space for winter operations. And a reminder, give the plow space, don't crowd the plow. Some library news. The new director, Jane Kearns, recently joined our administrative team. She's over at the library beginning mid-November. Ask folks stop by and welcome Jane to Williston. Some news from the Recreation Department. We're looking for basketball referees. We're working Saturday mornings in January and February for 1st through 4th grade basketball games. And these positions can be either paid or volunteer. If you're looking for more information or would like to get involved, email address for the Recreation Department is on the screen. A few programs starting in January or February: Healthy Eating Workshop, Youth Learn to Ski and Ride program, and the Kids Eat Healthy Workshop are among many offerings from our Recreation Department. A community group is hosting a tree lighting coming up on Sunday the 15th on the town green in the gazebo, just behind the library. They'll be having hot cocoa and treats, and they ask folks to bring a donation for the food shelf. It's sponsored by the Williston Federated Church. Reminder, our Williston Service Request portal is available through the town website. It's a way to request a non-emergency service from the town. You can find the link on the homepage of the town website. A reminder, we're on social media. You can follow us at Town Williston VT on Twitter or like us on Facebook. And we're always looking for feedback and segment ideas for the show. I'm Erik Wells, the Assistant Town Manager. You feel free to reach out to me with my contact information on the screen. So that's going to do it for this month on What's Up Williston. I wish folks a happy new year, and thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you around town. Take care.